Sounds good. Well, I'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate it. So today, as Alex just said, I'm going to be talking about mistakes companies make when hiring SEOs and how to fix them. So just a quick bit about me. My name is John Doherty. I'm the founder and CEO of Credo, where it's a company where we've helped over 4,500 companies at this point. I think it's around 5,000 actually, meet pre-vetted, hand-picked marketing agencies. So for about the last 5 years. So we connect companies that are looking to hire marketing providers. We connect them with our network of pre-vetted firms. Of these, just to give you some context about my background, 70% of these projects coming through Credo have some SEO element. Some also need PPC, Facebook content, that sort of thing. But the majority do need SEO. I myself, I'm a former marketing leader from inside Zillow. I worked there for 2 years, 2013 to 2015, hopads.com and Trulia Rentals, leading marketing and growth teams, marketing teams. I led SEO, but I also hired full-time SEOs, hired SEO agencies. I used to work at two SEO agencies actually. Well, one just full SEO agency. I worked at Distilled in New York City for 2 years. And before that, I worked for another agency on their owned properties. And as I said, I live in Denver, Colorado. Other than working in digital marketing and being a veteran marketer, an entrepreneur, an outdoorsman, skier, rock climber, cyclist, etc. I'm a husband. I've been married for almost 7 years now. I'm a dad to an 18, 19-month-old. And I have a big dog that I love. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about hiring SEOs. So a lot of the talks in this conference have likely been about doing SEO, right? The strategies and the tactics about actually doing SEO. I've done a lot of talks around that. What I am more interested in these days, and what I don't see a lot of people doing and thinking about and talking about and doing well, is actually hiring for it. We talk a lot about the tactics, how to build backlinks, how to write content that ranks, how to do technical SEO, your canonical strategy, that sort of stuff. Yes, that stuff really, really matters, but there's very little talk about hiring well. And so that's what I want to talk about here today to try to up-level the conversation. So what I found is that a bad hire will sink even the best laid strategies. And that's even if you can get the right strategy in place with a bad hire. There's a lot more to hiring as well than just budget. When we talk to people, people are like, the first question we get asked is, well, how much is it going to cost? Wrong question to ask. What we need to be looking at instead is looking at, cost matters, but we need to be looking at what is their experience, right? What is their strategy, right? How have they gone about doing this for others? What types of services are they providing? What kinds of services do you need if you're the hiring company? And then culture as well, which is a term that gets tossed around a ton, especially here in the US. People talk about company culture. And my question is always, what the F is company culture, right? What does that mean? And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. And I believe that one also needs to play an equal part in hiring both outside, so agencies, et cetera, as well as internal. So as I said, hiring strategy is just as important in my mind as SEO strategy when hiring to get SEO done. You need to hire for two things: competence and culture fit. Once you know that they can do the work, right? That's competence. You also need to make sure that they work in the way that you need them to. So culture, because that aligns with your company and aligns with the way that your company works. So when a lot of companies talk about culture, they talk about, oh, we have ping pong tables in our office back when we went to offices, right? We have ping pong tables. We do weekly happy hours, that kind of thing. In that case, well, I mean, what is culture in that case, right? You're looking for people that they like to play games while they're supposed to be working, and they like to drink alcohol. I'm not against either of those, but that doesn't actually get the work done, right? That's not what really matters there. So when I'm talking about culture, I'm talking about the way things get done inside your company. And what I've seen is that without this cultural alignment, work will not be accomplished as smoothly, and both sides are going to become frustrated, right? And because of this, the engagement likely will not end successfully. Even if you get some good results, it's not going to last, for infinity. It's not going to last for a really long time, simply because there's this rub, there's this frustration. So when you're looking for providers, or you're looking for even people in-house, I'm mostly going to be talking about hiring outside providers because that's what Credo does. But as I said at the start, I have also hired full-time in-house SEOs before, agencies, and also internally. I've hired, I don't know, 8, 10, 12, something like that internally into roles. And then also helped some of my own in the past when I was doing SEO consulting, helped some of them hire SEO directors, SEO leaders, that sort of thing. So there's probably around 20, 25 SEOs that I've hired. outside of agencies. And so when we're looking for providers, when we're looking for even internal people, look for the ones that already work in the ways that you work and that you need them to work, right? So their working hours, their reporting structures, their schedules, their, how often you catch up, not those who say that they can work in that way, because agencies will tell you anything to get you to sign with them, right? But if that's not the way that they actually work and can prove that that's the way that they actually work, then they're not likely to work in that way. Even if they say that they can, it's going to go against their own culture, and it's not going to work out well. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about 4 things. Number 1, we're going to talk about determining the type of provider that you need. Number 2, we're going to talk about how to find a qualified SEO provider. Number 3, we're going to talk about questions to ask these potential SEO providers. And number 4, we're going to talk about how to negotiate scope and pricing with SEO providers. So as I said, I'm going to be using the term SEO provider, SEO providers throughout this talk. It applies to agencies, consultants, freelancers, in-house as well. And I'll try to delineate kind of the point for each one of these, where each one of these really applies. So mistake number 1 that I see when hiring an SEO provider, is hiring the wrong type of provider. Let me explain this. So many companies, when they're hiring for SEO, don't consider carefully enough the type of provider that they need, and if they even need an outsourced provider. So there are 2 main considerations when it comes to hiring. Number 1, should we outsource or hire in-house, right? Because that directs where you go, how you recruit, that sort of thing. Number 2, if we outsource, what is our main need, and therefore what type of provider should we hire? So let's talk about that. So determining in-house or outsourcing depends on a lot of different things, right? And the main ones that the main factors that this decision hinges upon are internal knowledge. So do you have someone driving strategy that has SEO knowledge internally and you need people just to do it? Or do you need that knowledge as well? Do you need to pay for that knowledge? Number 2, budget available, right? How much can you spend to get this done? And number 3 is your ability to support a team. So most companies need a combination of in-house versus outsourced in order to properly execute on SEO. If you don't have internal knowledge, then you need to have a good marketing leader with at least strategic knowledge of where SEO fits in. If you have someone with that, then outsourcing straight away can be a great option. So when you're determining the type of provider you need, there are 3 main types of providers, and no one really breaks this down the way that I do, so I'm going to talk through it. Before you start searching, you need to understand the types and what each is best for. So these 3 types are, number 1, freelancers, right? We all hear the term freelancer. It gets tossed around. People come to me and say, I need a freelancer that does all of these things. I'm like, that person does not exist. Freelancers are usually solo. They're usually paid by the hour, right? They're billing by the hour. They're sometimes senior, though often not. But the thing to think about with freelancers is that they're solo and they're usually providing services, right? So they're building links, they're writing content, they're doing technical SEO, doing audits, that sort of thing. This is usually more akin to an in-house junior hire. They usually don't have as much experience as someone like me that's been doing it for 10, 11 years. Consultants are usually solo. They usually work on projects or retainers. And they usually just work on strategy and they do very little services, right? So they're coming in, they're working with developers, they're working across the team, they're helping you actually get it done internally. They might be doing some auditing and that sort of thing, but they're not writing blog posts for you, right? They're not going and doing outreach probably to build links. And then the third type is an agency. So an agency, 2 or more people, right? A big agency in SEO is about 40 to 50 people. I rarely see agencies bigger than that. Agencies are best for services when you don't have an in-house team, right? Or you need more, as we say in the US, boots on the ground. You need more people to actually get the things done. Agencies will sometimes do strategy if they have senior people, but that's not their core. When you think about an agency, think about services. When you think about a consultant, think about strategy. When you think about freelancer, think junior services is the best way to think about this. So my rubric for deciding is, do I need services or do I need strategy, right? If you just need services, freelancer or an agency. If you just need strategy, a consultant or an agency. If you need some combination in there, you need an agency or an agency coupled with a consultant or an in-house strategy leader. So pros and cons of each type. Each type, of course, has its own pros and cons for each. So freelancers are often cheaper, will work by the hour, right? They're hardworking, hungry to please, often lack processes and professionalism and need someone to oversee them. Consultants are more expensive than freelancers, often more expensive than agencies, honestly, don't do a ton of services, and they're usually more senior, they're more professional. They're kind of an in-house leader. Agencies have more overhead, account managers, et cetera. They often offer a lot more services than just 1 or 2 things, and they can get it all done usually rather than just relying on your internal teams a whole lot. So if you don't have an internal team, an agency can be the best. And also remember this, if you're not paying for an account manager, you are the account manager. So if you're like, well, I don't want an agency because they have the overhead of an account manager, just recognize if you hire a bunch of freelancers, you're the account manager trying to get them all to talk. Mistake number 2 is searching in the wrong way. So once you've decided to find an outsourced provider, how you conduct the search is important to finding the right one. So too many people, they ask blindly on social media, right? They post on Facebook, hey, who should I hire for SEO, right? They get recommendations from people who haven't hired before or have hired for a completely different type of business or a completely different type of need. Or they hire the first provider they speak with before comparing them to others. This happens all the time, right? I've seen over 4,500 companies that are looking to hire. Too many, they'll speak with the first one, I'm hiring that one. They won't have additional conversations. When they do have additional conversations, then the hard part becomes deciding who to hire, right? Because they're all good. But always comparison shop is what I'm saying. Always comparison shop. It's not just about budget. It can be, budget is important, as I said at the start, but it's about culture. It's about the services that they're providing, and all those things that I mentioned before. So how do you find an SEO provider? Now that you know the type or types of providers that you need, you can start researching in a better way. So there are 3 main ways that I recommend that people do it. Number 1, ask friends with similar businesses who they use, right? So if you're a service, you're a lawyer, right? Ask other lawyers or ask accountants, right? Like, because you're doing lead gen, you need lead gen. Google. Use Google. It makes sense, right? Search for, best e-commerce SEO agencies, best e-commerce PPC agencies, best SaaS SEO agencies, that sort of thing, best SaaS content marketing companies. And then look at their website for relevant work. And then directories, right? Directories like Clutch or Up SEO or a service like Credo. We're not a directory. We take a high touch approach, different from those companies, to cut down the hiring time. But those are the 3 best ways to create an initial list and start having those conversations. So now that you have that list of potential providers, it's time to look for a few things before reaching out to them. Number 1, do they have relevant experience on their site, right? Telling you about case studies, they have dedicated landing pages for this type of service. Number 2, do they talk about their process for engaging with clients? You're not just looking for SEO knowledge. SEO knowledge is the base of this, right? You shouldn't even talk to them if they don't have SEO knowledge. But do they talk about their process for engaging with clients? Because, it's a business engagement, right? So you need to know, are you going to be able to work together well? Are they transparent about where they're located and who's behind the company, right? If you look, there's so many agencies out there that don't even tell who's actually at the company. What does their team look like? Where are they even located, right? And in this day and age, just say that you're remote, right? Say that our team is spread around the US, right? Or like our core team is in the US and we, have a team in wherever else. A lot of development companies do that. So SEO companies should do that as well. And they should be transparent about that. If they're not, I would seriously consider not hiring them. And do they show their team, right? And at least their leadership. And does that jive with your company and how your company thinks about things? For example, I am the only white male at my company, right? There's 5 of us. I'm the only white male. I'm very proud of that, right? If I look at a company that it's all white males, I'm going to be less likely to hire them, to be completely honest with you. Next, booking conversations. So after this, now you're booking conversations with the ones who look qualified based off of that rubric. First call should be to feel each other out. Do you connect with them? Does it make sense to keep on talking, right? Keep it short so you don't waste too much time with people who aren't a good fit. Have 6, 7, 8 conversations. Second call should be to dive a lot deeper together into your problems, your business problems, not necessarily your SEO problems. So you can talk about those, but you don't want to start with SEO and then work backwards to business. Talk about their business and then figure out how, and then they should show you how SEO can help you get there, right? And if you have some SEO knowledge, you have some technical questions, oh, we've been told that we have this canonical issue, et cetera. Yeah, ask them about that because you need to know not just can they solve it, but how do they think about solving problems, right? Because next month, once you solve the canonical problem, you're going to have another problem, right? Do they have a way for thinking through these things and for helping you understand how you do that, how you can solve it, right? You're looking for experience. And I don't have a slide for this, but what I look for honestly is, do they have, so there's kind of 3 levels of thinking about, of how people think about SEO or anything really. There's tactics at the bottom. I think about it as a ladder. There's tactics, there's strategies, there's frameworks, right? Yeah, tactics change. They come and go, right? We've seen this. I mean, if you've been in SEO for any period of time, you've seen this, that tactics come and go, right? There's, various link building strategies that used to work that don't work anymore, right? Those are like strategies, but then the tactics for outreach, right? They get written about, and then, they see it's working as well, right? Then there are strategies, right? Which is the next level up, which inform the tactics. The strategies, those change as well, right? Guest posting, for example, used to work insanely well for link building. And it doesn't work as well anymore because a lot of, low quality providers have come onto the market and people are tired of being pitched content. Do not pitch Credo for content. We don't want it. But and then the top level is framework. So that's how you think about it, and then that informs your strategies, and then that informs your tactics, right? I look for that sort of thinking, not the just can you properly format a canonical tag? That should be base knowledge. You can Google that too. So when you're having conversations with pros, these are the guidelines, as I said. Number one, speak with multiple, 3 to 5. More than that, you get into analysis paralysis and you come back and you're like, I have no idea who to hire, right? That's because you didn't ask the right questions at the start. Number 2, keep the conversation short to probe for culture fit and required experience. Don't waste your time. Don't waste their time. You should not sign off on a contract, especially a multi-$1,000 contract, if you've just had one conversation. You need to get to know them better. Number 3 is getting multiple proposals. So get 2 to 3, understand your options, understand the trade-offs. Mistake number 3 is not asking the right questions. So too many companies look for an SEO provider that are looking for an SEO provider over index, no SEO pun intended, on the following things. Number 1, big brand logos, right? Seeing that they're trusted is good, but a logo doesn't tell you what they did for that brand, if it matters for your project, or even if the project ended well. Number 2 is budget. As I said, budget matters. It is important. Underinvesting will kill results, and you get what you pay for. But also remember that it is possible to overpay. So I'm going to talk about this here in a minute, and it goes along with minimum engagement length. So if you're skeptical, if you're super skeptical and you're just looking for, well, what's the shortest amount of time that I can commit to? Then you should really examine if you're ready to invest in this, right? And then number 4 is not asking about scope and results, and then the trade-offs for, budget and services and that sort of thing. So let's talk about these. So when we're asking the right questions about SEO, some of the questions to ask to determine their SEO capabilities are things like, what are some of the strategies and tactics you've seen that you have seen working well recently for a business like mine, right? Not just what's the strategies and tactics you've seen working well. You're a lead gen site, right? You're a lawyer driving leads, and they're all talking about e-commerce, right? Not relevant to your business. Ask them about like a business like mine. Number 2, can you give me some examples of working on a site, working with a site like mine, right? They should be transparent. They should have some companies they can tell you about, right? Honestly, this is way better than asking for references. Look at the results, right? So ask them for the site, then go check it in, SEMrush or Ahrefs or whatever tool it is that you use. So you can actually see, the data there. So, you can look at their content. You can look at the quality of the content. You can look at their technical SEO. Is that pretty squared away? You can ask them questions about that. You can look at their backlinks. Are they quality? And then the third question, how long does SEO usually take to start working for someone after they begin working with you, right? And then what levels of effort is required from our side? There are very few silver bullets in SEO. I found 2 or 3 over the years, over the last decade of doing it. So, it's obviously, it's not something that we should be, expecting, though it's awesome when it happens, but really understanding what's the level of effort required to get to results, right? How can you compress the results as much as possible within reason? And then number 4, how would you describe your approach? This is you asking agencies, remember, how would you describe your approach to SEO? White hat, gray hat, black hat? How risky do you think we can, should, or need to be in order to win? I'm squeaky clean white hat, right? But there are some industries that you can be more gray. You can be more aggressive on your anchor text, right? You can be more aggressive and still be within the bounds of what's going to be acceptable within that specific niche. And then, so with that, you can gauge how risky are they willing to be, and you can put that against how risky are you willing to be. So I'm not going to get into a moral argument here, but I think it's something that you need to kind of you need to suss out on your own. What's your risk tolerance, and then what is their risk tolerance, and making sure those gel. So let's talk about culture. Some of the questions asked to determine culture fit. These are the things that I see really making a project succeed. Number 1, how often are you reporting on your work, right? And how will I know that your efforts are being successful? I see too many agencies that don't report on their work. They don't report about the numbers that matter, right? They don't send monthly kind of recaps. Do you have a minimum project engagement length? So remember, I talked about this a couple of slides ago, and the reason why you ask this is because, so it is possible to be too skeptical. It's also possible to sign too long of an engagement. Agencies, obviously, they build off of recurring revenue, right? They have longer kind of like a software business. They have longer commitments so they can invest in the right team and all of those sorts of things. They're not just trying to pad their pockets. But I never recommend that someone start off just with an initial 12-month engagement. That's a big contract to be getting into from the start, right? I mean, minimum, like for good SEO, 24, 25 grand, right? Some companies, that's not a big deal. For my company, that's money. So I wouldn't commit to that, but I also wouldn't commit to, just ask them for like month to month. I see too many people that they come in and they're like, well, we want to do SEO, but we only want to commit to a month. And if it works, then we'll double down. Not how SEO works, right? That's not even how ads works. Not how development works. Like there's, it's just not reality. But what I tell people when it comes to hiring on a retainer, commit to a 3-month engagement, because that lets you see, can you work well together? Are you starting to see results? Are you getting great work done? You can see the quality of the work, and then go month to month after that and just keep on working together, right? Another great question to ask them about culture is, if you're approached by one of my direct competitors, would you work with them as well? Some people care about this, some people don't. But it's something worth kind of sussing out on your own. Who will I be speaking with on a regular basis, right? Is it going to be an account manager? Am I going to have direct access to the SEO, right? Is the SEO going to be my account manager? What's their background in account management? All those sorts of things really matter. Someone could be a great SEO and be really bad at account management, and your project's not going to work. Number 5, can you explain to me how your pricing works, right? We're getting back into pricing. Pricing matters. And what happens if we need to dial budget up in scope? We need to dial it up and we need to dial it down. What's involved in that, right? We need to cut back on budget and, do less content, do less, fewer hours, or we need to dial it up. Are we able to do that? It's important to understand that. It's kind of a what if that's important. And that happens a fair bit, to be honest with you. So now let's talk about negotiating scope and pricing. Once you've found a few vendors that you're interested in talking with, that you would be interested in hiring, it's important to know what you can negotiate and how to do it. So first of all, their proposal should have a statement of work within it. So you understand what you get and when for your spend with them. This gives you transparency into their pricing. And more importantly, this tells you where you can cut if you need to reduce budget, right? Or you have more budget, right? They underpitch you on the budget and you're like, we have more, right? So you're saying we're going to get four big pieces of content a month. Let's double that, right? Because the price per is whatever, and we have that budget. So let's double that. Let's dial that one up, right? Making those trade-offs. Note that you can do anything. You can ask them to just reduce the price, but the good ones won't. Instead, what I tell both people on the hiring on both sides of the hiring equation is negotiate on scope, not on price. So if you need to reduce the price, right, what they pitch you is more than you can pay. Let's say they pitch you 10K, you can only spend 7,500. You need to understand where things can be trimmed out. They should be telling you where things can be trimmed out, right? So negotiate on that. And as you move things out of the scope, then the price will go down. Don't just negotiate on price. You as a hiring company, if you're just negotiating on price, right, you're going to get the ones that are really in need of your business, yes, and want it, but really in need of your business. And they're basically lowering their rate. They're lowering their fee, right? Think about someone asked you to do that. It'd feel terrible, right? You'd be like, yeah, I guess so, right? But like your heart's not going to be in it. That's not a great way to start off on the conversation. You need to be equal partners in this. So negotiate down the scope if you need to get the budget down, or up the scope if you have more budget and you want to get results faster. Negotiating it down will bring the price down. Upping the scope will increase the price, and then ask them to help you understand the trade-offs, right? If we remove this part, what's that going to do to our results? If we add this part, what's that going to do to our results, right? And obviously a little bit of it, especially in SEO, is going to be a little like finger in the air, right? But it helps you to understand. And then number 3, length of contract can almost always be negotiated. I just told you about this, but it's worth reiterating. Don't sign a 12-month agreement to start. Negotiate for 3 months to start and then rolling ongoing, right? They should build in a review at some point, just to make sure that things are going well, right? See if you need to adjust the scope up or down. Also, agencies raise pricing, right? So they should build in a time. And if you're getting great results, right, and they can do more, then it shouldn't be a problem, to up pricing if needed, obviously within reason. If you do this, do be prepared for a higher monthly to start, right? Because they're kind of hedging that you won't continue. But it's better to pay 10% more each month than be saddled into a 12-month arrangement with an agency that you hate. That's how I look at it. I'd rather pay, as a founder, I would rather pay 10% more each month than to be like stuck into an engagement with someone that I don't like. So TLDR. when hiring SEOs, you need to, number one, hire the right type of pro. Don't hire the wrong type of pro. You need to hire the right type of pro to augment your internal knowledge and experience in the type of work that you need done. Remember, freelancer, consultant, agency are the three main types. If you don't have in-house knowledge, then you may need a couple of them, right? I was an SEO consultant for a number of years while getting Credo off the ground. I haven't done any retained SEO consulting in a few years now, but I was often brought in to do some initial auditing and work with the team and that sort of stuff. But then I would hire in agencies. I'd hire in agencies to get a lot of the work done. I was a consultant, didn't even work for them full time. I'd hire in agencies because they didn't have an in-house SEO leader. And then I'd hire an in-house SEO leader, right? So that's very, very reasonable to do. Number two, conducting your search in an effective way. So you get on the phone with the right pros, not just any pro that'll speak with you. The spray and pray methodology doesn't work, right? So ask people who have similar businesses who they use. Search Google, right? And do your research and look for things like case studies and do they have logos of maybe even your competitors. So that shouldn't be a requirement, but similar types of companies do you. And then number three, asking the right questions around both their SEO approach and their culture, right? So their SEO approach really matters. They need to have that knowledge, but they also need to work in the ways that you need them to, and you need to manage them in good ways, right? Know how often you need to be reported to, know how often you're going to be looking at the metrics, know how often you want to speak with them. You need to speak with them, right? And some of this can be a bit of a negotiation, but they should have a way in which they work. And if you work in that same way, then it can be a match made in heaven. So that's it. Thank you for listening. I'm happy to answer any questions. As I said, I've helped hundreds of companies spend millions of dollars with SEO agencies over the last 5 years. They've seen awesome results. I've personally worked as an SEO on sites like Zillow, New York Times, IHG, Holiday Inn's parent company, TravelX, and a lot more. Specialize in big sites and marketplaces. And there's my contact information.
John, thank you very much for your presentation. I personally learned tons of new stuff. I should just, circle back to our internal process, actually to adjust it a little bit. I think sometimes we are just, we need to focus more our agency on communication.
Full disclosure, I've worked with Alex's company for the last couple of years on link building, and they're phenomenal. But it was funny as I was putting this together, I was thinking about you guys, a lot, and things that you do great and things that you don't do as well. So that's awesome to hear that you learned some things.
I know. We need to set up a more proper, I would say, onboarding process, as well as there are a lot of missing bites. Well, I mean, it's all about also, I think, like any agency, you should all think not only about your side, but also just kind of, it's always important to fit a client as well, which John also mentioned quite a lot, because the reason behind it that sometimes when you don't ask the right question, you might then have a client that you don't really want to work with. And that's one more thing. And that's a waste of time actually from both sides, because you've done tons of job to close these contracts. And then, you need to return money, obviously, because you just feel that you are not the right match. And it happens as well. It's a part of an agency side. And I think it's very important to understand at some point that you are not really the best companies in terms of you're not matching each other. And so sometimes it's good to step back.
Well, that's part of the sales process too, right? Like you as the agency owner, you as the salesperson, you should understand what does your ideal client look like? And then also making sure that they're asking you the right question, right? So talking to agency owners now or consultants or whatever doing sales, you need to make sure that they're asking you the right questions, right? And they're like, okay, cool, sounds good. It's like, wait, hang on. We also need to talk about this. And it sounds counterintuitive, but actually by doing that, clients are going to trust you a lot more.
Yeah, for sure.
Do that, and you're like, I'm not just going to take your money, right? I actually want to make sure that you're going to see the results, and it's going to be good for both of us. And so I've definitely pumped the brakes on people before, and I've declined to work with some people before because it's like, and obviously I wouldn't say this to them, but I'm like, I don't really want to work with you.
I'd love to fire you out, actually.
Yeah, exactly. I've fired clients too before because I'm like, you know what, this isn't working. I've refunded people. I'm like, you know what? not working.
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes you just need to let it go. Just because you're not like, meeting their expectations, and that's very much it. Yeah.
Well, this is what I was talking about there at the start, right? Services, strategy, or both. Like people don't think about that often enough, right? I see consultants targeting terms like SEO services when they do strategy. I'm like, what are you doing? You're going to get completely the wrong types of clients there, right? Plus, like ranking for those sorts of terms, you're going to get a bunch of low budget, leads coming through. But it's just we need to think about that framework from both sides.
Yeah. So I have actually a question about setting up the process before you'd love to, I don't know, outsource your SEO. Who should set up SEO goals for your campaign? You or a company freelancer that you're planning to hire? What do you think, John?
It's a good question. So ideally, it's in-house.
You think it's better to just, brainstorm everything in-house?
Yeah, exactly. And so I say in-house, like the initial setup should be in-house, especially if you have SEO knowledge. You have SEO knowledge in-house, you should have that, you should know what matters to your company, right? And when an agency comes in or whoever provider comes in, even an in-house person, right? If you have some rank tracking set up, you have a weekly crawl set up in SEMrush, like that sort of stuff, then, it's just going to be, it's going to be much easier to kind of get everything going as opposed to like laying all the basis. Though I do also say, like, even if you have an SEO program going on internally, talk with the agency about it, right? Talk with the consultant, whatever, about it, to be like, are we tracking the right things? What else do we need to be looking at? Because they should have that experience, to help, or also ask them, hey, what do you usually report on to your clients? Because that'll give you a lot of insight as well. But yeah, it does need to start at the company itself. And then also, let me say this, Alex, you as the company hiring, you need to own that reporting, right? Don't rely on them to own that reporting.
Very good.
You need to own it.
Thing.
You need to own the spreadsheet. You need to own the Google Analytics install. You need to own the Search Console. You need to own the SEMrush account. You need to own all of that. Do not rely on the agency to do that. There are phenomenal SEO agencies out there. There are also not great SEO agencies out there. There are ones that will basically hold your contract hostage, hold all of your data hostage to get them to keep working with you, right? That's not a partnership. That's a hostage situation right there. That is not a situation you want to get into if you're hiring.
So you'd better recommend just, like owning everything to avoid any kind of, let's say, miscommunication.
Yeah, exactly.
So you need to actually, in that way, you need to have some budget for SEO tools if you want to do a proper reporting.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, so you need to take this into consideration as well, besides just, paying directly to an agency or a consultant, which is actually kind of a hidden thing here.
Totally. Well, and the great thing is, like, I mean, unless you're, an enterprise company, but if you're an enterprise company, you have enterprise level budgets, right? If you're a small company, I mean, SEMrush is what on the bottom plan, $100 a month?
Yeah,
something like that.
$100.
Like it's not much. Yeah. And agencies will have their own, should have their own sort of setups. Have their own, subscriptions and that sort of thing. They might use, all of them. They might have access to a deep crawl or something like that. I mean, a Screaming Frog license is like $150, $160 for the year, something like that. Like these costs are negligible, honestly, when it comes to, the results, the business that SEO can drive you. But it is necessary to take it, into account.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that brings up one more question, because I know a lot of guys that consider hiring an agency to save some costs on SEO tools in order not to just, we are going to reduce this cost and hire an SEO agency or a consultant that has access to all those tools and take advantage of this. Yep. But in reality, you still need something that also will belong to you in order to just, to check the performance and be the one that will be actually holding this data.
It's also a question of like, what is performance, right? I mean, there's the technical SEO geeky parts of performance, right? Like number of forwarding pages and links and blah, blah, blah. But then there's also the metrics, right? The business metrics, how much traffic's coming, what parts of the site is it coming to, that kind of thing. Like you need to have that squared away on your own side, your own, analytics dashboards, like whatever it is that you use there. I will say, so there's a few parts to this, and obviously I've hired in-house, I've hired agencies, I've worked in agencies, et cetera. it's not necessarily a bad thing to hire a consultant or something like that, right? You have a huge site, you need a full crawl, that kind of thing to diagnose it all, or you're just looking to outsource an SEO audit, right? They should have access to the right tools, to do that, right? Maybe they have a deep crawl subscription or Botify or, something like that. Like that's fine, but also recognize that when you stop working with them, that access goes away. And if you still need that access, you're going to have to pay for that anyway. So it's not really cost savings. Excuse me. It can expedite some of it, but it's not really cost savings. It's the wrong way to look at it, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have the very last question about what is the best way to track the process of your SEO campaign? Do you think it should be also done on the site of an agency that we discussed, or what kind of metrics also you need to take into consideration? Because I think you've done a lot of campaigns and you have a very holistic approach.
Yeah. So there's a few parts to it. There's the metric side and there's the, are you getting what you're paying for side? So, if they're saying whatever, 5 blog posts or 4 blog posts a month, that kind of thing.
Growth of rankings from 100 to 70, which doesn't really affect anything on your business side.
You got it. Yeah. So, just on the engagement side, like, are they giving you what they said they were going to give you? Point blank. On the metrics side, I mean, there are people that are probably more qualified to talk about this than I am at this point, but the things that I look for are, overall organic traffic, year-on-year organic traffic. I don't look at month-on-month because there's seasonality. Like, I mean, I look at it, but like, there's seasonality. And so, when you say like, oh yeah, traffic is down 20% month on month, it's like, well, that's because like there was a huge holiday and people didn't work for 2 weeks. Right. So, it's not really a metric that matters. Look at the year on year, growth. When you start working with a provider, you should also benchmark it. This is how we've been growing, right? So we've been growing 20% year on year, this whole year. Right. And then within a couple of months, like you're looking for, are they accelerating our growth? Right. Because you could have kept growing 20%. If you're growing 20% before you hire them and you're still growing 20%, what the heck are they doing? Right. And then, so those are the main things that I look at. You can look at rankings. You can look at what I often look at, especially because I've worked on bigger sites. Remember, that's been my main experience is traffic to specific sections of the site, right? Like I don't care as much if like this blog post that is, way out relevancy wise, still relevant to my company, but like way out from the core. I don't care if that one's all of a sudden driving a ton of traffic. So it's not going to mean a lot for my business. I care, are we driving more traffic to our category pages, which are the ones that drive the business, right? So don't just look at like overall organic traffic. You actually need to take some deeper cuts and look a lot deeper at not those specific keywords necessarily, though, those can give you insight as an SEO yourself, but more so, are we driving are the pages that are most relevant to our business, are they driving, more traffic, and therefore we're seeing more business results? That's the main thing I look at. As far as cadence, I review results at 3 periods. I review them weekly. I review business, traffic, et cetera, metrics weekly, just to know, kind of finger on the pulse, how are we doing? I review them monthly to see how we're doing year on year, especially, and are we trending towards our goals? So actually, I look at them daily as well. So I can say, how are we trending? Actually, I have graphs. You're
a business owner, for sure. You are doing this.
Yeah, exactly. I have graphs going back every month for the last 18 months, looking at leads, traffic, et cetera. I have all of that set up. So I look at that. Are we trending towards our monthly goals? Look at it weekly, look at it monthly, and then quarterly going back and reviewing it and saying, okay, do we need to adjust our strategies? So I actually recommend that you do that with your agencies as well. Or if you're an agency, do that with your clients as well.
Thank you, John. Alec, do you have any other questions? I'm sorry for keeping you away from our discussion. We can't hear you. I get the answer is no. Okay. I was asking whether we have any other questions to John.
Yes. Sasha?
Yes, of course.
Hi, John.
Hey, Oleg. How you doing?
Do you hear me? Yeah.
Sure can.
Thanks for useful speech. You are teaching people to ask right questions to right people, to hire SEOs.
That's the goal.
Yeah, I have some questions. First question, who should be responsible for conversions, amount of leads or calls on website, provider of SEO services or some guy in-house?
In-house. Absolutely. The person in-house should be the one responsible. But obviously it's results are a team sport. So, but the in-house person should be the one responsible for owning those metrics. Absolutely.
Because sometimes in Russia we trying to find with this problem because clients often asking us, guys, how many leads I will get, how many calls. Sometimes it's difficult to say, guys, you should track it in-house. It's your field. Okay.
Yeah, I will also say, Oleg, that the agency should be reporting on that. If the person in-house is asking that question, it means the agency isn't doing their job of reporting it, right? But the person that's ultimately accountable for those numbers is the in-house person, right? They should have their finger on that pulse and not be, if they're asking that question, they've abdicated the responsibility of it. They haven't delegated it.
Sometimes it's not possible because some businesses have not even have set up goals in Google Analytics, have no call tracking, no tracking tools, and they don't want to pay additional costs for some analytics solutions.
Right. Exactly. Yep. In which case it's your job as the agency to tell them that, hey, they're not going to get that insight, right? Like if you want to get that insight, you want to know how it's working, then, then you need to have these things set up. And as an agency, I would question whether I should bring them on as a client, right? Because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to report on the effectiveness of your strategies as well. So, when hiring, right, if you're the agency that you're being hired, remember you're interviewing them for being a good client as much as they're interviewing you for being a good agency.
Of course, it's very important because if it's this client not fits you, not right client for you, it will be very short and not passion contract.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah. It's kind of not meeting expectations. What I always say that our goal is not like doing something. We are trying to just, to meet our clients' expectations. And so that's the reason why we do our job. Otherwise, it's pointless. It's just negative reviews. And so that's very much just a reputational risk and nothing positive back to our brand.
Of course, we all have some great, amazing cases about super great clients and about some crazy clients, clients from hell.
We all have them.
Yeah. Sasha, have time for one more question?
I guess, I should say no. I'm sorry, but I should say no.
Okay.
Maybe
John,
next time.
I will add you on Facebook.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you very much, John, for joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Take care.